Nearly 30 years have passed since a working-class Italian-American family from Long Island first invited America into their kitchen, and the people who made that show unforgettable went on to live lives no viewer could have predicted. Lives shaped by rare cancers, tragic loss, quiet retirement into faith and family, one of the closest friendships in modern rock history, and the peculiar weight of being remembered forever inside a house on Fowler Street. One of them counted John Lennon among his closest friends, so close that the ex-Beatle stood as best man at his wedding, and would be dead within a year of the show ending, taken by a rare bone marrow cancer at 71. Another was already 70 years old when she stepped onto the Barone kitchen set for the first time, and would go on to win 4 Emmy Awards in her 70s before dying at 90. One of the smallest members of the cast, a boy who had barely started walking when he first appeared on screen, took his own life at 19, and left a family that has spent the years since fighting a cause no one should ever have to understand. And at the center of it all was a stand-up comedian from Queens, whose own family became the template for a sitcom that made him one of the wealthiest actors in television history. This is what happened to the cast of Everybody Loves Raymond nearly 30 years after it all began. She was the calm center of the storm, the poised, patient, sensible woman who married into the Barone family and somehow held her own against them. Amy MacDougall, later Amy MacDougall-Barone, was the audience's stand-in in a household where nothing was ever quiet and no meal was ever eaten in peace. Monica Horan played her from the first season through the last, appearing in 66 episodes across 9 seasons, giving Amy a warmth and a gentle stubbornness that made her feel less like a plot device and more like an actual person who had, against all reasonable evidence, decided to love Robert Barone anyway. She was 33 years old when she first walked onto the set in January 1997, and what almost none of the audience knew was that the woman playing Amy was married, in real life, to the man who had written the show. Monica Louise Horan was born on January 29, 1963, in Darby, Pennsylvania, a small borough just outside Philadelphia, where her father Robert worked as a courthouse officer and her mother Selma as a clerk. She graduated from Archbishop Prendergast Catholic High School for Girls in 1980, then headed to Hofstra University on Long Island, where she met a fellow theater student named Philip Rosenthal. She earned her degree in theater performance in 1984 and moved into New York City, doing off-Broadway theater by night and working as a phone sales agent for Telecharge by day. It was the classic New York actor's apprenticeship: long hours, small paychecks, and the constant question of whether the payoff was ever going to come. The payoff, when it arrived, came in an unusual form. She married Phil Rosenthal on April 22, 1990, and her husband spent the next several years working his way up the sitcom writer ladder in Los Angeles. When CBS gave him a chance to develop a series around a stand-up comedian named Ray Romano, Rosenthal wrote the pilot, cast the leads, and quietly built into the show a recurring role for the woman he loved. Amy MacDougall debuted in the first season episode, Who's Handsome?, in January 1997, and grew, season by season, from a blind date into a girlfriend, into a wife, into a permanent member of the Barone family. It worked because Monica Horan was genuinely good, and because Amy, awkward, kind, quietly hilarious, was the character the show needed to keep Robert from tipping into caricature. What Monica Horan did after the show ended in 2005 tells you something essential about who she was underneath the actress. She did not chase another sitcom. She did not push for a spin-off. She and Rosenthal, whose success with Raymond had made both of them extraordinarily wealthy, turned their attention increasingly toward the Rosenthal Family Foundation, which supports education, the arts, and social justice causes across Los Angeles. Their charitable giving has been substantial and quiet, funding Hofstra University where they met, along with UCLA, Homeboy Industries, City Year, and dozens of other institutions. She has appeared occasionally on her husband's Netflix travel series, Somebody Feed Phil, warm and self-deprecating and clearly enjoying the ride. She returned for the Everybody Loves Raymond 30th Anniversary reunion on CBS in November 2025, sitting alongside Romano, Heaton, Garrett, and the surviving Sweeten siblings. Today in 2026, Monica Horan is 63 years old, She and Phil Rosenthal have been married for 36 years, and they have 2 children, Ben and Lily. The woman who might easily have built the career of an entire generation of sitcom character actresses chose instead to build something quieter and more durable. She was the oldest of the Barone children, the practical, patient, occasionally exasperated older sister who watched her twin brothers destroy every family dinner for 9 consecutive seasons, with the resigned patience of a girl who had accepted very early that this was her life. Allie Barone was, for the entire run of the show, a study in quiet child actor professionalism. Never overplayed, never mugging for the camera, always credible as the daughter of Ray and Debra. Madylin Sweeten played her from the ages of 5 to 14, appearing in more than 200 episodes, growing up on set alongside the adults who would become, in a very real sense, her second family. She was 5 years old when the show premiered in September 1996, and what almost nobody in the audience realized was that the 3 Barone children were, in real life, actual siblings. Madylin Sweeten was born on June 27, 1991, in Brownwood, Texas, a small central Texas town where her parents Timothy Sweeten and Elizabeth Millsap were raising what would become a family of 4 children. When Madylin was still very young, the family moved to California, and within a year, the 3 older siblings, Madylin and her infant twin brothers Sawyer and Sullivan, had all been cast on a new CBS sitcom that no one had any reason to believe would run for 9 years. But it was Everybody Loves Raymond that would define her childhood, her adolescence, and, in ways that would only become clear much later, her adult life as well. After the show ended in 2005, Madylin stepped back from acting for several years, before returning to guest roles on Eagle Eye in 2008. Then a scattering of appearances across Grey's Anatomy, New Year's Eve, and a final on-camera credit in a 2019 episode of Lucifer. But the work she has done since has been mostly off-screen. Today she is a designer at the Joneses, a furniture and design shop in Los Angeles, and she is involved with LACAE, a Los Angeles nonprofit arts organization dedicated to reimagining actor training for contemporary artists. She married Sean Dury in 2018, and in April 2025, they welcomed their first child, a son named River. She has spoken with grace and quiet honesty about the family tragedy that shaped her adult life, advocating openly for suicide prevention and mental health awareness, and returning to the Raymond family for the 30th anniversary reunion in November 2025 to speak publicly about a brother she still misses every day. Today, in 2026, Madylin Sweeten is 35 years old. The girl who grew up in the Barone kitchen has become a mother, a designer, an advocate, and, by every available measure, exactly the kind of steady, thoughtful adult that Allie always seemed like she would grow up to be. They were, in a sense, one story told through 2 identical faces. Sawyer and Sullivan Sweeten played the twin Barone boys, Geoffrey and Michael, from the pilot in 1996 through the final episode in 2005, appearing across more than 130 episodes in what remains one of the longest continuous runs of any child actor sibling pairing in American sitcom history. They were 16 months old when the show began. They could barely walk. They grew up quite literally in front of the cameras, learning to read on set, celebrating birthdays with the cast, becoming the visual embodiment of what it meant to grow from toddler to teenager inside a television family. Sawyer Storm, Sweeten, and Sullivan James. Sweeten were born on May 12, 1995, in Brownwood, Texas. When their family moved to California 6 months later, no one could have predicted what was about to happen. Within a year, they and their older sister Madylin had all been cast on Everybody Loves Raymond. Sawyer had one additional notable early credit, appearing alongside Sullivan in the 2002 comedy Frank McCluskey, CI. But as the show ended and the boys became teenagers, both of them stepped almost entirely away from acting. Sullivan has, ever since, kept his distance from public life. He appeared in a 2017 short film called Casting, then largely disappeared from the industry, choosing, quite deliberately, a life outside the spotlight that had defined his entire childhood. He returned for the Everybody Loves Raymond 30th anniversary reunion in November 2025, appearing for the first time in years alongside his older sister and speaking with obvious warmth about the family he had grown up inside. Sawyer's story ended much sooner and much more painfully. On April 23, 2015, while visiting family in Texas, Sawyer Sweeten died by suicide. He was 19 years old, weeks away from his 20th birthday. The news devastated the extended Raymond family. Ray Romano, Patricia Heaton, Brad Garrett, Doris Roberts, and creator Phil Rosenthal all issued public tributes to the boy they had watched grow up in front of them for 9 years. Madylin, in a public statement issued at the time, urged people to reach out to those they loved and let them have no doubt of what they meant. In the years since, the Sweeten family has become quietly committed to suicide prevention and mental health advocacy, turning private loss into a public message about listening, about paying attention. Today, in 2026, Sullivan Sweeten is 31 years old and lives largely out of the public eye. Sawyer would have been 31 as well. He is remembered still as the small boy in the Barone kitchen who never quite got his moment, and by a family that has never stopped carrying him with them. He was the exasperated, cranky, endlessly loud patriarch, the man who spent 9 seasons complaining about the meatloaf, insulting his neighbors, telling his wife to be quiet, and somehow managing to make all of it feel like a real man rather than a walking punchline. Frank Barone was the deadpan center of gravity in a household of overreactors, and Peter Boyle played him with the kind of world-weary gravitas that only comes from having lived an actual life. He was 60 years old when the show premiered in September 1996, and by any reasonable measure, he had already lived enough life for 3 people before Frank Barone was ever written down on paper. Peter Lawrence Boyle was born on October 18, 1935, in Norristown, Pennsylvania, and grew up in Philadelphia, the son of Francis Xavier Boyle, a locally beloved children's television's personality known throughout the Philadelphia broadcast market as Uncle Pete. Peter grew up watching his father work in early television, understanding from a young age that entertainment was a real industry populated by real people. But his own path into that industry was one of the strangest in American acting history. After graduating from West Philadelphia Catholic High School for boys in 1953, Boyle spent 3 years as a novice with the Institute of the Brothers of the Christian Schools, the De La Salle Brothers, a Catholic teaching order. He lived under the name Brother Francis. He earned a B.A. from La Salle University in 1957, and then, quietly, he left the monastery because, as he would later put it, he had felt the call for a while, and then he had felt the normal pull of the world and the flesh. What followed was a decade of quiet, unglamorous struggle. He was commissioned as an ensign in the U.S. Navy through Officer Candidate School in 1959, but his military career ended after a nervous breakdown. He moved to New York City, studied with the legendary acting coach Uta Hagen, and worked as a postal clerk and a maitre d', while building his stage credits piece by piece. He joined the touring company of Neil Simon's The Odd Couple in the mid-1960s. And then, in 1970, came Joe, a low-budget, brutal, uncompromising film about a factory worker on a rampage against the counterculture, in which Boyle gave a performance so raw that he was afraid of being typecast as a racist forever. He turned down a similar role in The French Connection because of that fear. The role went to Gene Hackman, who won an Academy Award for it. Then came 1974, and everything changed. Mel Brooks cast him as the monster in Young Frankenstein, a role that revealed a completely different Peter Boyle, a comic Peter Boyle, capable of the puttin' on the Ritz tap dance sequence that would become one of the most beloved moments in American film comedy. On the set of that film, a Rolling Stone reporter named Lorraine Alterman arrived to interview him. He was still in full Frankenstein makeup when he asked her out. They married in 1977. Through Lorraine's friendship with Yoko Ono, Boyle became genuinely close with John Lennon, so close that Lennon stood as his best man at the wedding. Their first daughter, Lucy, was born 2 days after John Lennon was murdered outside the Dakota in December 1980. Their second daughter, Amy, arrived in 1983. Boyle worked steadily through the 1970s and 1980s. Taxi Driver, The Candidate, Outland, Where the Buffalo Roam. Never quite becoming a leading man, always turning in the kind of performance that made other actors want to work with him. In October 1990, he suffered a near-fatal stroke that left him completely speechless and immobile for nearly 6 months. He recovered. He kept working. In 1996, the same year Everybody Loves Raymond premiered, he won an Emmy Award for a guest role on The X-Files, playing a man who could see how strangers were going to die. It was one of the finest performances of his career, and it arrived just as the sitcom that would define his final decade of work was beginning. He was nominated for 7 Emmy Awards for Everybody Loves Raymond. He never won. In 1999, he suffered a heart attack on the set, recovered, and returned to the show. He appeared in every one of its 210 episodes. Frank Barone became one of the most quoted characters in the show's history. His catchphrases, his complaints, his particular brand of Italian-American grumpiness permanently embedded in American popular memory. Peter Boyle died on December 12, 2006, at New York Presbyterian Hospital from multiple myeloma, a rare bone marrow cancer, and heart disease. He was 71 years old. The show he had helped anchor for 9 years had ended just a year and a half earlier. His wife Lorraine established the Peter Boyle Memorial Fund in his honor, supporting the International Myeloma Foundation. The final films he had completed, All Roads Lead Home and The Santa Claus 3, were dedicated to his memory in their closing credits. The monk who had become a monster, who had become a father figure to a generation of television viewers, had lived a life that, in every essential way, exceeded anything the scripts had ever asked of him. She was the meddling, magnificent, impossible-to-ignore center of gravity of the entire show, the mother-in-law from every American nightmare, and, somehow, one of the most beloved television characters of her generation. Marie Barone spent 9 seasons interfering, judging, cooking, criticizing, and, in her own overbearing way, loving her sons with a fierceness that made Debra want to move to a different state. Doris Roberts played her with a warmth and precision that took decades of stage and screen work to build. She was 70 years old when the show premiered in September 1996, and she had spent almost 50 years in the business before she became, for the first time, genuinely famous. Doris Mae Green was born on November 4, 1925, in St. Louis, Missouri, and raised in the Bronx after her father, Larry Green, deserted the family when she was still a child. Her mother, Ann Meltzer, moved the family to New York, where Doris grew up under the care of her mother and her stepfather, Chester H. Roberts, whose surname she would take as her own. It was not a childhood of comfort or ease. She studied journalism briefly at New York University, then abandoned that plan for the neighborhood Playhouse School of the Theater, where she trained under Sanford Meisner. She joined the Actors Studio, whose contemporaries included some of the most legendary names in American theater. She made her Broadway debut in 1955 in William Saroyan's The Time of Your Life. For the next 2 decades, she was a working New York actress in the truest sense: Broadway, off-Broadway, the occasional film, the occasional television guest role. She played opposite James Coco in Neil Simon's Broadway production of The Last of the Red Hot Lovers. She appeared in Terrence McNally's Bad Habits. And there, in a Broadway house one night in the early 1970s, she was seen by Lily Tomlin, who was so struck by her performance that she brought Doris to Los Angeles to appear on The Lily Tomlin Comedy Hour in 1975. That single Emmy-winning special introduced her to the Hollywood television industry, and everything changed. She played the meddlesome mother of the title character on Gary Marshall's sitcom Angie from 1979 to 1980. She earned her first Emmy Award in 1983 for a guest role on Street. Elsewhere, playing a homeless woman with such quiet dignity that the performance is still discussed in acting classes today. That same year, she joined the second season cast of Remington Steele as the efficient, quirky secretary Mildred Krebs, working opposite a young Pierce Brosnan and Stephanie Zimbalist through 1987. By the time Phil Rosenthal was casting Everybody Loves Raymond in 1996, Doris Roberts had appeared in more than 40 films, dozens of television shows, and a full working lifetime's worth of Broadway productions. She was 70 years old. Nobody in the industry could quite believe she was 70 years old. She auditioned for the role of Marie Barone against nearly 100 other actresses. She got the part. And over the next 9 seasons, she would go on to win 4 Emmy Awards for the role: 2001, 2002, 2003, and 2005, and receive 7 nominations in total between Street. Elsewhere and Raymond, she won a total of 5 Emmys across her career, making her one of the most decorated character actresses of her generation. What made her special was not simply the awards, it was the fact that she had done it, this level of recognition and beloved cultural presence. Beginning in her 70s, she used the platform relentlessly. In September 2002, she testified before a United States congressional panel about the pervasiveness of age discrimination in Hollywood. She kept working after Raymond ended, appearing on Grey's Anatomy, Hot in Cleveland, Desperate Housewives, and, in a genuinely lovely late-career reunion with Patricia Heaton, On the Middle in 2010. She wrote a memoir with recipes in 2005 called Are You Hungry, Dear? Life, Laughs, and Lasagna. She was awarded the Ellis Island Medal of Honor in 2011. She was, by any reasonable accounting, a national treasure who had arrived at national treasure status roughly 40 years later than most. Doris Roberts died on April 17, 2016, in Los Angeles, from a stroke brought on by pulmonary and chronic hypertension. She was 90 years old. Just weeks earlier, she had attended a SAGAFTRA discussion and asked from the audience why there were so few roles for older actors. She had never stopped fighting for the work. She was survived by her son, Michael Kanata, Jr., who had also served as her manager, and by 3 grandchildren. The woman who had spent decades as a working New York character actress became, in her final chapter, the beating heart of a sitcom watched by hundreds of millions of people. She earned every second of it. He was, quite literally, the biggest presence in the room. 6 feet, 8.5 inches tall, with a booming voice that could shake the studio walls, and the perfect physical embodiment of a man permanently overshadowed by his shorter, more successful younger brother. Robert Barone was the show's great secret weapon, the neurotic, put-upon, endlessly wounded older sibling whose insecurities became one of the richest comic engines in modern sitcom writing. Brad Garrett played him for 9 seasons and won 3 Primetime Emmy Awards for the work. He was 36 years old when the show premiered in September 1996, and the road he had traveled to get there was already by that point an entire career's worth of near misses and unlikely breakthroughs. Brad H. Gerstenfeld was born on April 14, 1960, in Oxnard, California, to Alvin All Gerstenfeld, a hearing aid salesman, and Barbara Gerstenfeld, a homemaker. He was the youngest of 3 brothers, and the family moved fairly early to the Woodland Hills section of Los Angeles, where Brad graduated from El Camino Real High School in 1978. He was already extraordinarily tall. He was already funny. He briefly enrolled at UCLA, and dropped out after less than 2 months, having decided, with the particular certainty of a 19-year-old, that he wanted to do stand-up comedy for a living. He worked the Los Angeles clubs, the Improv in Hollywood, the Ice House in Pasadena, and in 1984 became the first $100,000 grand champion in the comedy category on Ed McMahon's Star Search. That win changed everything. It led directly to his first appearance on The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson at the age of 23, making him one of the youngest stand-up comedians ever to perform on that stage. It led to opening slots for Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. It led to a short-lived 1988 sitcom called First Impressions, which went nowhere. It led to a decade of voice work, Casper in 1995, A Bug's Life in 1998, as his distinctive baritone became one of the most recognizable voices in American animation. And then, in 1996, he auditioned for a small role on a new sitcom about a family in Long Island. He was originally called back for a bit part. He walked out with the role of Robert Barone. What he did with the role over the next 9 years is now permanent television history. Robert's neuroses, his petty rivalries with Ray, his lopsided love life, his particular way of touching food to his chin before eating, Garrett made all of it feel human and specific in ways that transcended sitcom convention. 3 Emmy Awards followed. So, did continued voice work of extraordinary breadth. The police fish bloat in Finding Nemo in 2003, the food critic Auguste Gusteau in Ratatouille in 2007, and roles in Chicken Little, Planes, Christopher Robin, and Pixar's Elio in 2025. His live-action work continued with the Fox sitcom Till Death from 2006 to 2010, ABC's Single Parents, HBO's High Desert with Patricia Arquette in 2023, and Chuck Lorre's Max series Bookie from 2023 to 2025. But perhaps the most distinctive thing Brad Garrett has built since Raymond ended is not a role at all. It is Brad Garrett's comedy club at MGM Grand in Las Vegas, a working stand-up venue he opened and continues to host, appearing there regularly for the fans who never got tired of watching him do exactly what he had wanted to do since he was 19 years old. In December 2025, he announced that he would be doubling his 2026 show schedule to an average of 18 performances per month. His Maximum Hope Foundation, founded to help families with seriously ill children who lack sufficient resources, has been one of the most quiet and consequential legacies of his post-Raymond decades. He was married to Jill Diven from 1999 to 2007, and has been married to Isabel Quella since 2021. He has 2 children. Today in 2026, Brad Garrett is 66 years old. The tallest cast member became, in every important sense, the largest presence in the show, and he never once wasted it. She was the working mother at the center of the chaos, the woman who somehow held down a marriage, 3 children, a career, and a monster-in-law across 9 seasons of increasingly baroque family dysfunction. Debra Barone was the audience's proxy in the Barone household, the eyes through which we watched the madness, and Patricia Heaton played her with a sharp, exhausted, deeply relatable intelligence that made Debra feel like every overwhelmed working mother in America at once. She won 2 Primetime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series in 2000 and 2001, becoming one of only a handful of women in television history to win the category back-to-back. She was 38 years old when the show premiered in September 1996, and her path to that moment had involved substantial early loss and a decade of grinding stage work that most of the audience never knew about. Patricia Helen Heaton was born on March 4, 1958, in Bay Village, Ohio, a Cleveland suburb where her father, Chuck Heaton, worked as a legendary sports writer for the Plain Dealer for more than 50 years. She was the 4th of 5 children in a devoutly Catholic family. When she was 12 years old, her mother died suddenly from an aneurysm, a loss that would shape everything that came after. She graduated from Ohio State University with a Bachelor of Arts in Drama in 1980, then moved to New York City to pursue acting. She waited tables. She made her Broadway debut in Don't Get God Started in the late 1980s and co-founded an off-Broadway theater company called Stage 3. A recurring role on 30-something opened the door to television work in Los Angeles. Her first marriage, to producer Konstantin Yankoglu in 1984, lasted 3 years. In 1990, she married British actor and producer David Hunt, and the couple would go on to have 4 sons: Samuel David, John Basil, Joseph Charles, and Daniel Patrick. When Everybody Loves Raymond premiered in 1996, Heaton was already the mother of 2 small boys. She would have 2 more during the show's run. The image of Debra Barone, permanently frazzled, permanently outnumbered, was, in many ways, drawn directly from a working actress trying to raise 4 children in Los Angeles while carrying an 8-day-a-week sitcom. After Raymond ended in 2005, Heaton did something that few sitcom leads have ever managed. She found a second hit series. ABC's The Middle premiered in 2009 and ran for 9 years, matching Raymond exactly, season for season, with Heaton as Frankie Heck, a Midwestern car saleswoman raising 3 kids on a shoestring budget. It became one of the great underrated family sitcoms of its era, and it gave Heaton, at 51, an entirely new generation of viewers. Her CBS sitcom, Carol's Second Act, followed in 2019 and 2020. Her Food Network series, Patricia Heaton Parties, won her a Daytime Emmy Award in 2016. Her production company, 4 Boys Films, named for her 4 sons, has developed a growing slate of family-oriented projects. She joined the Paramount Plus Frasier revival in a recurring role as Holly, reuniting her with Kelsey Grammer. She appeared in the psychological horror thriller The Beldam and in the 2024 drama The Unbreakable Boy. On March 4th, 2026, Heaton posted a birthday photo on social media with the caption, "Might start acting my age this year? Nah." a line that captured in 6 words the particular way she has aged in front of a country that grew up watching her. She has embraced her natural gray hair. She has spoken openly about her Catholic faith. She has been married to David Hunt for 36 years. Today in 2026, Patricia Heaton is 68 years old. The girl from Bay Village who lost her mother at 12 became, over the course of 40 years, one of the most quietly consistent leading actresses in American television. And she is, by every available measure, still working. And finally, him. There has always been him. Ray. The Queen's accent, the raised eyebrows, the shrugged shoulders, the perpetually rumpled look of a man who could not quite believe that this was happening to him. For 9 seasons and 210 episodes, Ray Romano did not so much play Ray Barone as reveal him, the ordinary, decent, mildly bewildered husband and father, trying his best in a family that made trying its best feel like a full-time job. And what almost no viewer needed to be told was that the man on the screen was, in most of the ways that mattered, the same as the man who had walked into a CBS meeting years earlier and pitched a sitcom about his own actual family. Raymond Albert Romano was born on December 21st, 1957, in Queens, New York, and grew up in Forest Hills, the son of Albert Romano, a real estate agent, and Lucy Romano, a piano teacher and homemaker. It was a middle-class Italian-American upbringing, and Ray grew up in the middle of the exact family dynamics: brothers, parents, the small dramas of Sunday dinners that would eventually populate the show. He attended Hillcrest High School, then enrolled at Queens College and later Lehman College studying accounting. And then, in 1989, he entered a Johnny Walker comedy search and made it to the finals. That competition led to stand-up bookings, which led to Comedy Central appearances, which led, through a route that took most of the next 7 years, to a set on The Late Show with David Letterman that changed everything. Letterman's production company signed him. CBS built a show around him. Everybody Loves Raymond premiered on September 13th, 1996. He was 38 years old. What happened next was one of the more remarkable financial success stories in modern television history. By the show's 5th season, Romano was earning $800,000 per episode, reportedly making him, briefly, the highest-paid actor on network television. The show won 15 Primetime Emmy Awards across its run, including Outstanding Comedy Series in 2003 and 2005. Romano himself won 3 Emmys, 1 for lead actor and 2 as a producer. His total earnings from the show, including syndication royalties, are conservatively estimated in the range of $161 million, and his current net worth in 2026 is estimated at roughly $200 million. But what he did with the platform after the show ended is the more interesting story. He voiced Manny the Woolly Mammoth in the Ice Age franchise beginning in 2002, returning to the role across 5 sequels, with a 6th, Ice Age Boiling Point, scheduled for a 2027 release. He created and starred in the TNT drama Men of a Certain Age from 2009 to 2011, a show about middle-aged male friendship that won a Peabody Award and gave Romano the chance to prove he could carry a genuinely dramatic role. He appeared in Kumail Nanjiani's The Big Sick in 2017. He played mob lawyer Bill Bufalino opposite Robert De Niro and Al Pacino in Martin Scorsese's The Irishman in 2019. He starred with Mark Duplass in the quietly heartbreaking Netflix film Paddleton the same year. He wrote, directed, and starred in his own film Somewhere in Queens in 2022, a small drama about family and second chances that suggested he had more to offer American cinema than most of Hollywood had realized. In 2026 alone, he has made his Broadway debut in All Out, comedy about ambition, a rotating cast reading of Simon Rich stories that brought Romano into live New York theater for the first time. He has been touring a new stand-up hour reflecting on becoming an empty nester, aging, and friendship. He has agreed to appear as a coach in the upcoming series Running Point with Kate Hudson. And, in the most significant personal development of his year, he has become a grandfather for the first time. He has been married to Anna Scarpula Romano since 1987, one of the longer and quieter marriages in Hollywood, and they have 4 children. Today, in 2026, Ray Romano is 68 years old. The stand-up comedian from Queens who spent nearly a decade grinding through comedy clubs before his big break became, almost by accident, the anchor of one of the most beloved American sitcoms of the 21st century. And then, once the sitcom was over, spent 20 years quietly proving that there was more to him than anyone had guessed. That is not a small legacy. That is the arc of a man who took the enormous good fortune of one perfect role and turned it into an entire second career. There it is, the world that existed just behind the cameras of Everybody Loves Raymond, rare cancers and quiet philanthropies, Broadway monks who became Frankenstein's monster and counted John Lennon as a friend, twins who grew up in the Barone kitchen and paid for it in ways no one should have to pay, character actresses who spent 40 years waiting for the right part and won 4 Emmy Awards in their 8th decade, working mothers who anchored 2 of the most beloved sitcoms of their generation, comedians who built empires in Las Vegas from the wreckage of a college dropout's gamble, and an ordinary Queens accountant who became, for 9 unforgettable years, the face of an American family. Some of them are still working, some of them are gone. Some of them chose quietly to walk away and never regretted the choice. One of them we lost far too early, and his family carries him with them still. All of them are part of one story, the story of what it means to be at the center of something that mattered to people, really mattered in the way that the best television can matter to a family gathered around a table on a Monday night, and then to go on living after the cameras stop, through all the mess and surprise and ordinary weight of a real life. Nearly 30 years, 9 seasons, one show that became a generation's memory. Tell us in the comments, which of these stories surprised you most? And who was your favorite member of the Barone family? If you want to keep finding the real stories behind the classic shows and the people who brought them to life, subscribe to this channel and ring the bell. Every week, we go past the legend and into the life.